Okay, so we're continuing to go through more or less Chris Bray's book, although a lot of the stuff we're presenting now, I'm focusing mostly on cube situations now. So we've gotten.
Gary, I'm sorry if I could interrupt and make one more announcement. You're saying Chris Bray reminded me that Chris Bray is going to do one of our women in backgammon learning sessions with a young 18-year-old UK player, Sophia Tracy. So that's Tuesday, September 13th at noon. So we're trying to do it at a time that works for our British participants. So be looking for notices for that. Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
Hey, Gary, there's a little bit of a scratchiness on your line too, just so you know.
Okay.
That's a little better, actually.
You're coming through clear for me, Gary.
Okay.
Okay.
Time to update internet provider.
Yeah. I don't know what to do about that.
You sound good now.
Okay. All right, good. So we're going pretty much beyond this book at this point, but picking up on ideas that he's presented in the book. And since this book is a beginner's book, it doesn't really go into the level of detail. And we're trying to take you beyond beginners, and so that you can be a competitive and bring to the intermediate level. And if you take it a lot of these things further and really understand them, you can be very competitive at the advanced and open level. So what we're last time we went over what I called the rule of four, which is basically a holding game. Let me pull out an example of that. And this is kind of a reference position. The idea here is that for a lot of cube decisions, you can't intuitively figure out what your chances of winning are and that sort of thing. But if you look at these reference positions, so a certain number of reference positions, you get a general idea, and hopefully you can come up with general concepts that help you. So for the rule for this type of position, it's a mutual holding game where one side has cleared his 18 point and only has the midpoint to clear. And so the key issues here are and so we can develop something called what they call the rule of four, and the four refers to you've got to have 4 checkers or less at the midpoint, and that's the 4 part. And then you have to have a racing lead, and you have to have a landing point in the outfield. Usually it's going to be the 8 point, but sometimes it's the 9, but usually the 8 point, and then you have a racing lead. And if the racing lead is about 12%, then this is going to be a double intake. And here we've got slightly less than 12%. So, we did something like this. Well, it's still, you lose the spare there, but that's roughly where the point is where you can start to double. And it's going to be a take. So it's almost always a take in this position. And the same applies if whether black has the 5 point, say, or the bar point. The same rules apply. So it's really, and for that matter, the 4 point. And so the same rules apply. So what I wanted to go over today is kind of the, after you got into this, or, after you've cleared the midpoint and maybe you didn't have quite the opportunity to double. So what we're looking at here are kind of high anchor holding games, and we're looking at cube decisions that can be made here.
Gary, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Gary, but I thought you'd said the other week that the rule of four pertained to bearing off where there's a checker on the bar and a closed board.
Yes.
Yes.
There are 2 rules of four.
Okay.
Yeah, we went over that, I think, in this shot. There are 2 rules of four.
Okay.
One is kind of after, if you've gotten a late hit and you've now closed out your opponent, but your opponent has some checkers off already, and he's on the bar, and that's a difference. That will go over next week for the lesson. But that comes up frequently enough, and I think it came up in the Chouette. So last week, or maybe it was the week before that, whenever it was. But so we'll get to that rule of 4, but that's a different rule of 4. So here we're kind of looking at high anchor holding games. These are kind of, maybe the mutual midpoint holding game held and without clarity or whatever, or whatever, however you got there, you've got one player has a high anchor, 5 or 4 point, and the other player is very in. And the question is, when do you double here, and when is it a pass? And so there's a very simple rule for this, without too many, there are plenty of subtleties involved, but a very simple rule to remember, to make it easy to remember. And that's basically, I'll put it here, I've summarized it, is to understand that what this situation is, it's a combination of 2 things. It's a race with some sort of, hitting chances. So from White's perspective, it's mostly a race, but you've got to be concerned about getting hit. For Black, you have something called race equity, and you have something called shot equity. Race equity means that you still have a chance to roll big doubles and get around and bear off before your opponent. And then shot equity means that you may be able to hit the opponent, and then that will usually end the game there if you do get to hit. The other aspect of this too is part of the race equity is that, for instance, when White is bearing in here, White's not going to want to leave a shot, and so is going to play deep. May be forced to play deep, and so may end up stacking the ace point or the deuce point. So one of the things we have to keep in mind of when we're trying to evaluate the race is the kind of Keith count considerations. So we went over the Keith count a few weeks ago, and for the Keith count, you remember you start with the pip count, but you have to adjust for wastage, and typically the wastages are stacks on the ace and deuce point. That's where most of the wastage comes, but also open points on the 4, 5, or 6. So you need to keep that in mind. But the basic rule for these situations is that when you're, in terms of, and they're summarized here, when you're thinking about doubling, it's most often the case that it's going to be, you're going to double, the doubling window opens when the racing window would open. So I've summarized that here, 10% minus 1. And that was under the method that I showed. There is a separate Keith count method, which basically comes up with pretty close to the same thing. But so the 10% minus 1 is your lead is 10% of your pip count minus 1 pip. So here, the example on the screen is 86, and there are no adjustments here. So that would be 10% is 8, minus 1 is 7. So this position here is right at the cusp of the double.
So Gary, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting again, but I had heard once that you double when you're 12% ahead and it's a take at 8%. Is that like totally wrong, or is that a different situation?
Well, I think there are different ways. That's not the method that I taught. There are kind of rules of thumb. I think the Roberti rule of thumb is something like that. You're going to double at.
Right. Roberti says 12%.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the pass. That's the passing point. I'm not sure. It's something like 10% to double and 12% to pass. Okay. So the doubling window is between 10 and 12%. I think that's what he said. I'm not sure. That that's pretty close to the rule of, or the method that I talk. The method I talk is a little bit more accurate because, and Bill Ruberti, I don't think used Keith count adjustments. So let me go over. I have it here. Racing formulas. Oops, doubling window. No. Oh, maybe I didn't put it here. Yeah, I guess I had it summarized somewhere. I don't remember where it is. But in any case, yeah.
It's 8% to double and 12% to pass. That's the old formula.
That's the I think that's the Ruberti rule, and yeah, that sounds.
That's the one.
Yeah, but
that's what it is.
Okay, so but the more accurate way is really what I call I've called the rule of 62, and it's really 10% plus 2. That's the pass point, and 10% minus 1 is the where the doubling window's open. Those are very close because the 10% is 10% minus 1 is often about 8%. So and the range is only 3 pips. So yeah, that's much more accurate. It's when you think about it, it's probably easier to compute that way. 10% minus 1, 10% plus 2 is pretty easy to compute once you have the pip count. Much easier than 8% or 12%, and it's more accurate. So I would go with that. The 8 and 12 may be easier to remember, but 10 minus 1, 10 plus 2, it's not that hard either, and it's more accurate. So I would do that. Okay, but the point here is that for these types of positions, you have a similar doubling window, but it's a much wider window. And in general, we'll go over some of these situations where, but the doubling window is going to open roughly where just the pure race would open, which is the 10% minus 1. And this is not quite as accurate as a pure racing formula, but it's close enough. And if you want to drop your PR by 0.1 or 0.2, you can go in and study all the different variations and things that matter. And you may be able to get better than this. But what is different about it is that we take into account the shot equity, and I guess the inefficient equity, I guess, from here, in this case, White having this, potentially having to go deep and create distribution problems or distribution issues, so that the window, the take part for Black is expanded, or for the defender here, the high anchor player, so that the window is going to open at 10% minus 1, and instead of closing at 10% plus 2, it's 10% plus 7, basically, roughly. And there are certain circumstances where it's much higher. So we'll get into those. And the key things that matter here are what type of board do you have. If you have a full board, then it's 10% plus 7. Actually, and with the even with the crash board, once the key thing here with the crash board, and we'll look at some examples of this, you have to do the Keith count adjustments to do that, because often with the crash board, the race may be even, it may look even, the pip count may be even, but once you adjust for the Keith count adjustments, it's not even, actually. The Keith counts may be the same. The other thing the things that matter are the number of landing points that the back anchor has. So for instance, in this example, the back anchor is at the 11, and he's got landing points at the 5 and the 6, but not at the, I'm sorry, the 7 and the 6, but not at the 5. And by landing points, I mean with one die. So, between 1 and 6. So because the 6 point is blocked, only the 5 and the 5 and the 4 point are open. That's only 2 landing points. If you had this position, now you've got 3 landing points. And what we'll see is, let's back up, is that if you have 3 or more landing points, you've got a much more compressed window. If you've only got 2 landing points, then basically black can take this up to a huge racing deficit. The shot equity is so much that that you can just take this. We'll also take a look at gaps. So if we have something called a 5-point gap or a double gap, which is gap out here, and then the 5-point gap is if your anchor is up to 4 point and the 5 point is not full, that's another liability that gives the defender a lot of chance to hit a shot or to cause lots of problems for the leader on this, the pip leader on this case. So let's look at some examples. So here we've got this right here. Oh, I changed it. Let's go back to the original. So here we've got a lead of 7. That's 10% minus 1. 10% is 8, minus 1 is 7. So this is right at the point where you can start to double. And I think what a lot of people see this are afraid to double here. If you're white down here, if you're yellow, just because you're afraid you're going to leave a shot. But the thing to remember on all of these is that there's a fairly good chance that you'll leave a shot at some point, but black also has to hit it. And with your racing lead, you've got a very strong advantage doing that. And even if black does hit it, for instance, in this situation, if black hits but can't cover, you can come in and maybe get a shot or do something else. So, I would say most people are reluctant to double in this situation, even with the racing lead, because they're afraid that they got to get past this anchor, and that's but it is a double. In fact, it's a 70. You're here 70-30 to win, so that's a good doubling point. Let's go look at some more examples. So here we have a case, I already did it, where we've got three landing points. And in this case, we're ahead up by 15 pips. The 10% is 8. And so 10% plus 7 that's kind of where we are. And that's right at the point where it's a pass. And actually, if we did the Keith count adjustment, we would penalize ourselves 1 pip. So really, from the Keith count, we're out by 15, we're up by 14. So, this is right at the point where you would pass. So we can move this. Well, if you want to work with this, you can adjust checkers around. Maybe we'll do this at certain points to see, but anyway, that's how you come up with these ranges. Let's take a look at another example. Here we are. Okay, now here we're with a crashed board or a crashing board. But the key here is that we've got to take into account the adjustment. So black is not, the pip count for black is 79. But after we adjust for Keith count penalties, there's 2 or 4 penalties for the ace point and 2 pips for the 2 point. So that's 6. And so black is really at 85. And so this is the case where the 10% plus one, I'm sorry, 10% minus one is going to be 6 pips ahead. And here we're we're 8 pips ahead. Actually, it's only 7 because of the penalty here too. So, you know, this is right at the point where you would double here. Let's see, now to show the extended, let's see, I want to show that, let's see, do that. I don't know if we can get down to, I wanted to show the other end of it, where it's a pass. I don't think we can do that here in this situation because we'll just crash the board. So let me go on to the next one. Okay, yeah, here we're a situation where, again, we do the Keith count, where it's, you know, if you just do the pip count, it's an even race, but with the Keith count adjustments, we know that it's not an even race. And so we've got penalties here for the ace point of 4, 5, 6 for the 2 point, 7 and 8 for the open 5 and 6 points. Black has only got 2 landing points. So, but really we're 8 pips ahead. And so, that the 10% minus 1 is 6. So this is right on the cusp. So this is not exactly the perfect example, but the 10% minus 1 is, you know, roughly where you should be once you do all your adjustments. And so that's kind of where we are now. And so again, this is a double, well, I should say, I think it comes out a double plus plus. No, it doesn't, but you know, that's right on the cusp of being a double. So again, you know, a lot of people, you know, are afraid to double here, but it is a double, and it's based mostly on race. I had some examples with, you know, where it's passed, but can't find them now. So let's look at here are some cases where you've got gaps. So, and often people just pass these because they're so far, it looks like you're not going to win. But you know, the race here, it's a 9 pip gap. It's 11. Actually, we're up by 11, so that's 10% plus 2. And so this is a double. These are tricky. I put down when I went over a lot of these examples, and I have. It's actually a little bit higher with the gaps. I don't call this is not meant to be a double gap, but it's a little bit higher with the gaps. But you know, if you stick with the 10% minus 1, I think you're close enough to be okay. So this is a double. With the double gap here, we can move a lot of checkers around. When this becomes a pass, this is 40 pips. It depends on, yeah, this is still close. This is still 38 pips. Yeah, so here we're in the range of 30 pips here as a racing lead, and that's what it takes to be a pass. So, you know, I in the chart, I've got certain numbers there, but they're really kind of loose. And you know, but the point is there's a wide range, and you can't, it's not just a race, and the extent to which you have, you know, the flaws, I guess, in White's plan or dangers in White's plan coming in, which are mostly gaps, then you have a lot of leeway. Because you'll get a lot of really White monkeying around, going deep, trying to avoid leaving the shot. So you're likely to get a shot in this situation. And if you don't get a shot, then it's likely that White has stacked a lot of checkers on his ace point. In the meantime, Black has plenty of time to keep a strong board and to come around. all these things, add up to a wide range of takes. Okay. So here's a common one, and again, a lot of people are going to pass this. I've been in Chouettes where I said this, tried to tell people that this was a take, and didn't go very well. But this is a take, and this is kind of at the high end of this is a bear take, and that's because of the race. And so here we've got, this is 10% plus, almost 30, 25 to 30 pips. And it's still a take. And even though this is a fairly benign distribution, there are a lot of rolls that are going to make the 5 point for white, although, 4-1 is 4-1, 4-2, and 4-3 are not one of them. But the point here again is that, just this simple gap here gives you a lot of opens up the window a great deal. If you close the gap, this is a big pass because of the race, and because there's no danger. This is pretty easy to bring home. And here, the doubling window opens here at around the normal rate, 10% plus 1, 16 or so. That's close. Or 10% minus 1. And here this is a little bit higher. One of the reasons is one of the nuances of the Keith count is crossovers. And here we've got white has a lot of crossovers. So some people make a Keith count adjustment. I found it's not really worth it too much, but in this case, you've got all these crossovers here. Where black has its own set of crossovers, 6 here for black and 7, but compared to 6, 7, 8 here for white. So that's part of the problem. But again, the windows more or less opens on a normal racing basis, but the window closes very late for things like these gaps.
Gary, if the roll was 4-1, what would you play?
Probably 8-3, something like that. Maybe 6-1. That's a reasonable question, but obviously you're not going to make the 5 point with the 4-1 because you don't want to leave the shot. If you get hit here, you still have chances actually if you do get hit here if you're white, but they're not very good. So I would do. It looks like 7. Okay. Well, 7-2, 8-3. These are all basically the same. 2-1, even 6-1. Any one of those, I would have done probably 8-3, but it's slightly weaker. But again, if you're white, what you're going to do is, not leave a shot. If you can breathe this without leaving a shot, then your chances are pretty good. Black is going to eventually either crash his board or be forced to break his anchor. And as long as you have enough checkers to attack once black breaks his anchor, you're in a pretty strong position. And even if you can't, as long as you can come in safely, you have the type of racing lead that you can bring it home. Which is why, again, racing is so important. Okay, so let's look at some other cases here. Okay, this is what I call the double gap. And what I mean by double gap is you've got a gap from your last anchor and a gap on the 5 point gap. And so this is a difficult situation. And this is the one case where the window your doubling window doesn't open in the normal spot. Any of these other situations, your window is going to open up around 10% minus 1, give plus or minus a pip or two. Here,
Gary,
with the
I'm
double
sorry
gap.
Sorry to interrupt you again, Gary, but you have a checker off there, which might be distorting your percentages.
Oh, yeah.
Any chances? You have a checker off, yeah.
Oops. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I wonder why. Let me do that again. I just got left off. Yeah, so here, this is, we're up by 37 pips, but this is closer to, closer to a no double than it is to a double. Despite the big racing. So here, this situation is not really about the race so much. It's more about, okay, this is awkward to come in, and you're likely to bring, you're likely to leave a shot at some point here. Last one to look at. Yeah, so here, even despite all this, there is an upper limit here. This is a 58 pip lead, and this is a pass. It's hard to convert that into a 10% whatever, because it's 10% plus 50 more or less, and that's not that useful. But I guess the point is, with this type of double gap, you've got to push it back. It's not just about the race anymore. It's kind of the one situation where it's not about the race. Now, I didn't do a lot of look at a lot of these, but this is a different situation, and this is still a pass. But let's make the race a little bit closer. Here, it's still going to be a double and a pass. In this situation, this checker is much easier to clear because you don't have to clear it cleanly. I would guess this is more of a normal racing type of situation. Yeah, double take. And here it's actually, yeah, it's more, but you can see that the window is still extended a bit with this. So, the 10% minus one would be like an 8 pip lead. And here, the doubling window kind of opens it at, a 10% minus 8, 10% plus 8 instead of 10% minus 1. So, all these things matter to a certain degree or not, but the key features to look for are things like this gap. This gap here is key, which is why making the 5 point is pretty important for white coming in. But having the gap here gives you a whole lot of room to take a double.
So how would you play a 6-1, 6-2, or 6-3? Would you make the 5 point?
Yeah, I would here. Let's look at it. Yeah, I think, yeah. Here, because you're giving up, you're giving up the 5-2 and the 6-1. And if you don't make it, then you still have the gaps here. And you have gaps with one less builder to make a point. So, you're giving up 4 rolls to make that point. And that's generally worth it. If you gave up, let's see, and another interesting question is, now here you're giving up 4-3. You're giving up 6 rolls, and so do you make it? And the answer is no. That's an interesting idea. I haven't worked with that, but so. Here we're in sort of the same situation, except that we're giving up six numbers, 6 rolls instead of 4. And in this case, it's not worth it. We can make the 5 point, which is still not a bad play. I wonder if we did a plus, but it's not the best play. There are probably rules of thumb you could work out on that as to when to leave that shots and how many. But leaving 6 shots is a much bigger deal than leaving 4 shots, and it makes the difference in this situation between making the 5-point or not making the 5-point. So the other, well, no, I won't go into that. Okay, so that's.
Could you go back to the previous board just a minute, and then take the 2 checkers on the 4 and put it on the 1, and then put it on the 5? I'd just like to see what it looks like.
Which 2?
The 2 checkers, black checkers on the 4, put it on the 5.
Oh, okay.
And I just wanted to see what it did.
Yeah, so here we've gotten rid of the gap, and now we have a 56 pip lead, and white here has 4 landing points. So this, I'm going to be pretty sure this is a pass. In fact, it's too good to double.
Okay. Now put it on the 1.
Yeah. Okay, just, Les, what do you think? Has black improved its position or made it worse?
Oh, much worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big pass. And at the 5-point, it's funny, actually, it's worse, but not really. This is almost too good to double. Yeah, so it's funny, it looks worse. It's actually not worse.
That's amazing.
Because black, this is a well-timed 8-point game. It's not a very good game, and it's still a pass, but it's not too good to double. And the reason is black has a bunch of shots coming as white tries to make his board, and black is coming around building his board. And then even if white comes in and enters perfect position, black still has the 8-point, and there's still from that point you get about 15% wins, because coming in off the 8-point is not always that easy. In fact, we covered this with Michi's book. It's about it's a really high percentage, 90 to 95% of the time you're going to leave a shot for white coming in off the 8-point game. Now it's still overwhelming advantage to white because black has to hit, white has to leave the shot and black has to hit it. So and the chances of hitting shot, it's usually one direct shot. So it's got 1136. There's 1/3 of a chance, less than 1/3 of a chance to actually hit the shot. And then once you hit the shot, black has to come around, close you out, and get bear off before you before white comes in and gets around, does his thing. So okay, so I will put that's kind of it for this one. I will put this on, but the main thing is when you've got these high anchor games and you're bearing in, is that your doubling window opens mostly, the easiest rule is it mostly opens the same unless you've got the double gap, the 5-point gap and the outer point gap. It's mostly going to open at a regular racing point, and it's going to close at about a +7 instead of a +2 for the most part. The exceptions being, if you've only got 2 landing points for your back anchor, or if you've got the 5-point gap, and if you've got a double gap, then it's very hard to not be in that doubling window. You got to have a really huge racing deficit. Okay, so let me close or stop the recording.